Good morning and welcome, welcome, welcome. What a delight it is to welcome you to this Zoom service of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Northern Nevada. I am Reverend Karen Foster, and it is a delight to welcome you into this space this morning. On this particular Sunday, the Sunday before Christmas and the day before solstice, we're delighted that you're here and we welcome you into this place where we celebrate that we do not have to think alike to love alike, and our differences are one of our greatest strengths. You'll remain muted throughout the service, and you're invited to make use of the chat box, especially later in our service during our time of joys and concerns. At the end of our service, you'll be invited to stay on for our Polar Express presentation or into small group conversations if you would like. We couldn't be happier that we are all together today. We're delighted that you're here. And if you are a newcomer with us, there's a note in the chat box that you can click on and fill out some information. If you've been here many times and you have never done that, we would love to provide you with some information about our congregation. So if you could click on that and we can add you to our email, that would help us stay connected. Once again, welcome. We're delighted that you're here. Let's join together in a rousing beginning of our service, Deck the Hall. We hope that you're joining us this morning in your PJs, and if you have a holiday hat to don, you're invited to do that. Today, as we particularly engage in a little bit of lightness and a little bit of whimsy, as we find some joy and engage in the spiritual practice of laughter as we enter into this holiday season. You're invited to access your chalice if you have it nearby. And as we light our chalice today, may its warmth and light be a reminder to seek joy where we can find it and to be about a spiritual practice of lightness and laughter as much as we can for ourselves and for each other in these days. And it is in that spirit that we offer the following presentation for your enjoyment.
Dylan Thomas, foremost Welsh poet born in Swansea, Wales in 1914 and died in New York City in 1953. At 35, he described himself as old, small, dark, intelligent, and dart-dotting, doting-eyed, bald, and toothlessing. Thomas wrote that he became a poet because I had fallen in love with words. His themes, the celebration of the divine, godly purpose, and all human and natural processes, moving from darkness into light. Because we are not Welsh, Carrie and I will be using our normal voices, but please enjoy the beauty of the piece as a fun memory and bask in its lovely use of language for this holiday season. Now, A Child's Christmas in Wales by Dylan Thomas. One Christmas was so much like the other in those years around the Seatown corner now, out of all sound except the distant speaking of the voices. Sometimes I hear a moment before sleep that I can never remember whether it snowed for 6 days and 6 nights when I was 12, or whether it snowed for 12 days and 12 nights when I was 6. All of the Christmases rolled down toward the two-tongued sea like a cold and headlong moon bundling down the sky that was our street. And they stop at the rim of the ice-edged, fish-freezing waves, and I plunge my hand into the snow and bring out whatever I can find. In goes my hand into that wool-white, bell-tongued ball of holiday, resting at the rim of the carol-singing sea, and out comes Mrs. Prothero and the fireman.
It was on the afternoon of the day of Christmas Eve, and I was in Mrs. Prothero's garden, waiting for cats with her son Jim. It was snowing. It was always snowing at Christmas. December, in my memory, is white as Lapland, although there were no reindeers. But there were cats. Patient, cold, and callous, our hands wrapped in socks, we waited to snowball the cats. Sleek and long as jaguars and horrible whiskered, spitting and snarling, they would slide and sidle over the white back garden walls, and the lynx-eyed hunters, Jim and I, fur-capped and moccasined trappers from Hudson Bay off Mumbles Road would hurl our deadly snowballs at the green of their eyes. The wise cats never appeared. We were so still, Eskimo-footed Arctic marksmen in the muffling silence of the eternal snows, eternal ever since Wednesday, that we never heard Mrs. Prothero's first cry from her igloo at the bottom of the garden. Or, if we heard it at all, it was to us like the far-off challenge of our enemy and prey, the neighbor's polar cat. But soon the voice grew louder. "Fire!" cried Mrs. Prothero, and she beat the dinner gong. And we ran down the garden with the snowballs in our arms towards the house, and smoke indeed was pouring out of the dining room, and the gong was bombulating, and Mrs. Prothero was announcing ruin like a town crier in Pompeii. This was better than all the cats in Wales standing on the wall in a row. We bounded into the house, laden with snowballs, and stopped at the open door of the smoke-filled room.
Something was burning all right. Perhaps it was Mr. Prothero, who always slept there after midday dinner with a newspaper over his face. But he was standing in the middle of the room saying, "A fine Christmas," and smacking at the smoke with a slipper. "Call the fire brigade," cried Mrs. Prothero as she beat the gong. "They won't be here," said Mr. Prothero. "It's Christmas." There was no fire to be seen, only clouds of smoke, and Mr. Prothero standing in the middle of them, waving his slipper as though he were conducting. "Do something," he said, and we all threw our snowballs into the smoke. I think we missed Mr. Prothero and ran out of the house to the telephone box. "Let's call the police as well," Jim said, "and the ambulance, and Ernie Jenkins. He likes fires." But we only called the fire brigade. And soon the fire engine came, and 3 tall men in helmets brought a hose into the house, and Mr. Prothero got out just in time before they turned it on. No one could have had a noisier Christmas Eve. And when the firemen turned off the hose and were standing in the wet, smoky room, Jim's aunt, Miss Prothero, came downstairs and peered in at them. Jim and I waited very quietly to see what she would say to them. She said the right thing always. She looked at the 3 tall firemen in their shining helmets, standing among the smoke and cinders and dissolving snowballs, and she said, "Would you like anything to read?"
Years and years ago, when I was a boy, when there were wolves in Wales and birds the color of red flannel petticoats whisked past the harp-shaped hills, when we sang and wallowed all night and day in caves that smelt like Sunday afternoons in damp front farmhouse parlors, and we chased with the jawbones of deacons the English and the bears, before the motor car, before the wheel, before the Duchess-faced horse, when we rode the daft and happy hills bareback, it snowed and it snowed. But here a small boy says, "It snowed last year too. I made a snowman and my brother knocked it down and I knocked down my brother and then we had tea." But that was not the same snow, I say. Our snow was not only shaken from whitewashed buckets down the sky, it came shoaling out of the ground and swam and drifted out of the arms and hands and bodies of the trees. Snow grew overnight on the roofs of the houses like a pure and grandfather moss, minutely ivied the walls and settled on the postman, opening the gate like a dumb, numb thunderstorm of white, torn Christmas cards.
There were church bells too, in the bat-black, snow-white belfries, tugged by bishops and storks. And they rang their tidings over the bandaged town, over the frozen foam of the powder and ice cream hills, over the crackling sea. It seemed that all the churches boomed for joy under my window, and the weathercocks crew for Christmas on our fence.
I'd like to take this opportunity to say a huge and immense thank you to you. Thank you for the way that you stepped forward and provided for our ribbon of joy this year. Copious carloads of gifts were collected, laundry baskets, gift requests filled, cash given for gifts to be purchased. I can't even express the gratitude and the joy over at the Women and Children Center of the Sierra for all that you provided. Thank you so much for your generosity for a ribbon of joy this year. As we prepare to take our offering today, I want to also thank you for your immense generosity over these last few months. We'll take our offering once again today, and there are several ways that you can contribute. You can text UUFNN to the number 73256, or you can mail a check if you prefer. Or the best way to give is automatic giving. It's convenient, you don't have to think about it, and we can mail you an authorization form for an automatic draft. I share the plate partner. We're to the last couple of Sundays for the Nevada Youth Empowerment Project, and we want to thank you for your generosity toward that. You have been so generous these last few months, and our congregation is in a pretty good place financially. However, because the building is not open, we do not have our income from building rentals. And also because we're not in person, the loose offerings from the plate being passed, we don't have those either. So if you can, make an extra gift over and above your pledge at any point. If you are not a pledger yet and you'd like to become a pledger, we can certainly help facilitate that. But this is a good time to give an extra gift or to become a pledger or do whatever we can to make sure that our fellowship stays on firm financial footing throughout this time. Thank you so much for your generosity. And now let our offering begin. Due to a moment of technical challenge, just in case you need that text number again, because our slide was unable to come up, the text number is 73256, just in case you need that. Thank you for your generosity, and will you join me in our dedication of the offering? To the work of this fellowship, which is helping more people grow in love, faith, justice, and joy, we dedicate ourselves, and these are offerings.
Then useless presents, bags of moist and many-colored jelly bellies, and a folded flag and a false nose and a tram conductor's cap, and a machine that punched tickets and rang a bell, never a catapult, once by mistake that no one could explain, a little hatchet, and a celluloid duck that made, when you pressed it, a most unduck-like sound, a mewing moo that an ambitious cat might make who wished to be a cow, and a painting book in which I could make the grass, the trees, the sea, and animals any color I please. And still, the dazzling sky blue sheep are grazing in the red field under the rainbow-billed and pea-green birds. Hard-boiled toffee, fudge, and all sorts, crunches, cracknel, rainbow-billed and pea-green birds, hard-boiled, coffee, fudge, and all sorts, crunches, cracknel, humbugs, glaciers, marzipan, and butterwelsh for the Welsh, and troops of bright tin soldiers who, if they could not fight, could always run, and snake and families and happy ladders and easy hobby games for little engineers complete with instructions. Oh, easy for Leonardo. And a whistle to make the dogs bark, to wake up the old man next door, to make him beat on the wall with his stick to shake our picture off the wall, and a packet of cigarettes. You put one in your mouth, and you stood at the corner of the street and you waited for hours in vain for an old lady to scold you for smoking a cigarette. And with a smirk, you ate it. And then it was breakfast under the balloons.
There are always uncles at Christmas, the same uncles. And on Christmas mornings, with dog-disturbing whistles and sugar fags, I would scour the swathed town for the news of the little world and find always a dead bird by the post office or the white deserted swings, perhaps a robin, all but one of his fires out. Men and women waiting, scooping back from chapel, with taproom noses and wind-bust cheeks, all albinos, huddled their stiff black jarring feathers against the irreligious snow. Mistletoe hung from the gas brackets in all the front parlors. There was sherry and walnuts and bottled beer and crackers by the dessert spoons, and cats in their furabouts watched the fires, and the high-heaped fire spat, all ready for the chestnuts and the mulling pokers. Some few large men sat in the front parlors without their collars, uncles almost certainly, trying their new cigars, holding them out judiciously at arm's length, returning them to their mouths, coughing, then holding them out again as though waiting for the explosion. And some few small aunts, not wanted in the kitchen nor anywhere else for that matter, sat on the very edge of their chairs, poised and brittle, afraid to break like faded cups and saucers.
Not many these mornings trod the piling streets. An old man, always fawn bowlered, yellow gloved, and at this time of year with spats of snow, would take his constitutional to the white bowling green and back, as he would take it, wet or fire, on Christmas Day or Doomsday. Sometimes two hale young men with big pipes blazing, no overcoats, and wind-blown scarves would trudge unspeaking down to the forlorn sea to work up an appetite, to blow away the fumes, who knows, to walk into the waves with nothing of them left but the two curling smoke clouds of their inextinguishable briars. Then I would be slapdashing home, the gravy smell of the dinners of others, the bird smell, the brandy, the pudding and mince, coiling up to my nostrils when out of the snow-clogged side lane would come a boy, the spit of myself, with a pink-tipped cigarette and the violent past of a black eye, cocky as a bullfinch, leering all to himself.
I hated him on sight and sound, and would be about to put my dog whistle to my lips and blow him off the face of Christmas when suddenly he, with a violet wink, put his whistle to his lips and blew so stridently, so high and so exquisitely loud that gobbling faces, their cheeks bulged with goose, would press against their tinseled windows, the whole length of the white echoing street. For dinner, we had turkey and blazing pudding, and after dinner, the uncles sat in front of the fire, loosened all buttons, put their large moist hands over their watch chains, groaned a little, and then slept. Mothers, aunts, and sisters scuttled to and fro, bearing tureens. Aunt Bessie, who had already been frightened twice by a clockwork mouse, whimpered at the sideboard and had some elderberry wine. The dog was sick. Aunt Docie had to have 3 aspirins, but Auntie Hannah, who liked port, stood in the middle of the snowbound backyard, singing like a big bosom thrush. I would blow up balloons to see how big they would blow up to, and when they burst, which they all did, the uncles jumped and rumbled. In the rich and heavy afternoon, the uncles breathing like dolphins and the snow descending, I would sit among festoons and Chinese lanterns and nibble dates and try to make a model man-o'-war, following the instructions for little engineers, and produce what might be mistaken for a seagoing tramcar. Or I would go out, my bright new boots squeaking into the white world, onto the seaward hill, to call on Jim, Dan, and Jack, and to pad through the still streets, leaving huge, deep footprints on the hidden pavements.
The silent, one-clouded heavens drifted onto the sea. Now, we were snow-blind travelers, lost on the North Hills, and the vast dew-lapped dogs with flasks around their neck ambled and shambled up to us, baying "Excelsior!" We returned home through the poor streets where only a few children fumbled with bare red fingers in the wheel-rutted snow and cat-called after us, their voices fading away as we trudged uphill into the cries of the dock birds and the hooting of ships out in the whirling bay. And then at tea, the recovered uncles would be jolly, and the ice cake loomed in the center of the table like a marble grave. Auntie Hannah laced her tea with rum, and because it was only once a year.
Bring out the tall tales now that we told by the fire as the gaslight bubbled like a diver. Ghosts wooed like owls in the long nights when I dared not look over my shoulder. Animals lurked in the cubbyhole under the stairs where the gas meter ticked. And I remember that we went singing carols once when there wasn't the shaving of a moon to light the flying streets. At the end of a long road was a drive that led to a large house, and we stumbled up the darkness of the drive that night, each one of us afraid, each one holding a stone in his hand just in case, and all of us too brave to say a word. The wind through the trees made noises as of old and unpleasant and maybe web-footed men wheezing in caves. We reached the black bulk of the house. 1, 2, 3, and we began to sing, our voices high and seemingly distant in the snow-felted darkness round the house that was occupied by nobody we knew. We stood close together near the dark door.
Good King Wenceslas, look along on the feast of Stephen.
And then a small, dry voice, like the voice of someone who has not spoken for a long time, joined our singing. A small, dry, eggshell voice from the other side of the door. A small, dry voice through the keyhole. And when we stopped running, we were outside our house. The front room was lovely. Balloons floated under the hot water bottle gulping gas. Everything was good again and shone over the town.
Always on Christmas night, there was music. An uncle played the fiddle, a cousin sang Cherry Ripe, and another uncle sang Drake's Drum. It was very warm in the little house. Auntie Hannah, who had gone on to the parsnip wine, sang a song about bleeding hearts and death, and then another one in which she said her heart was like a bird's nest. And then everybody laughed again. And then I went to bed. Looking through my bedroom window out into the moonlight and the unending smoke-colored snow, I could see the lights of the windows of all the other houses on our hill and hear the music rising up from them, the long, steadily falling night. I turned the gas down. I got into bed. I said some words to the close and holy darkness, and then I slept.
Jubilate Dome, jubilate Deo, Alleluia. Jubilate Deo, jubilate Deo, Alleluia.
We join together now in our moments of community prayer and meditation. We join our hearts and our spirits and our minds as one, as we take this opportunity to express our gratitudes, our celebrations, our concerns, and our sorrows in the chat box for these next few moments. In these days of the light returning, in these days of the longest night and the shortest day, may we return to our breath. May our breath sustain us. May we breathe all the way down to our toes. May our breath be energizing and life-giving and help us touch peace and joy and hope. We gather all of our prayers and our concerns, our intentions, our hopes, and our dreams, for they are one in the heart of love. Amen.
Jubilate Deo, jubilate Deo, Alleluia.
I want to thank you so much for joining us for today's service, and really hope that you have gotten something that you needed from this time of whimsy and lightness and humor and having a good time together. I want to remind you about our Christmas Eve service at 5 o'clock on Zoom on Thursday on Christmas Eve. That's at 5 o'clock. Please do bring an extra candle that you can light during that service during our candle lighting time. And I also wanted to remind you that I would like to recognize and name the new babies of the past year during that service. If you have a grandchild or a child or a neighbor that has been born over the last year, would you send me the full name of that baby and the date that they were born? And we would like to recognize and celebrate all new babies at our Christmas Eve service. Our Legacy Committee would like to remind you that this is a good time to make a special gift to Legacy to our endowment for the end of the year, which will ensure that UUFNN goes on long into the future. If you have questions about that, we can put you in touch with one of our Legacy Committee members. There is a solstice event tomorrow evening. You can get that information in your email that comes out tomorrow, and please pay attention to all of our programming. There are many events for connection and togetherness in these days. I'll also call your attention to Christmas Day. Billy Lee and Stan are hosting a get-together at 3 o'clock on Christmas Day. For conversation, you can bring a beverage or dessert or whatever it is you like to have a time of connection and conversation on Christmas Day at 3 o'clock. We are wanting to do all that we can to help Georgia out as they near their election in the next couple weeks. So we'll want to be mindful of that in our hearts and supporting that effort in any way that we can. And you're going to be invited in a few moments to stay on for our reading of Polar Express or into small groups for coffee hour conversations. And Mary Lee of our Committee on Shared Ministry has an announcement for us.
Good morning. I'm Mary Lee, a member and former chair of the Committee on Shared Ministry, which represents you in supporting Reverend Karen and her ministry. As has been mentioned, Reverend Karen will be taking a 1-month mini sabbatical beginning January 6th. She's eligible to take 5 months in 2021, but will take 1 month at this time due to COVID. This is a time for all of us to do even more than ever to take care of each other, including our minister. Reverend Karen and our staff have done a phenomenal job during the past 9 months, caring for all of us. It is time for Reverend Karen to take some time to care for herself, time to replenish, reflect, rest, rejuvenate, and preserve her health. We will miss her, but we know she needs this time for self-care. Sabbatical is one of the best tools we have for ministerial longevity. We understand that you may have some questions. There is an article in our weekly e-blast to answer the questions you may have about Reverend Karen's sabbatical leave.
Thank you, Mary. So at the end of our service, after our closing song, you're going to be invited to stay in the main room for our Polar Express event, or you can accept the invitation to a coffee hour group and be put into a small group for conversation. Please enjoy our final closing song that I think you'll recognize. Here's a special COVID parody for these days.
I don't want a lot for Christmas. There is just one thing I need. I need you to keep your distance, at least 6 feet away from me. I want to hear your lovely tone, but only over Zoom or phone. Together we'll pull through. you. I don't want a lot for Christmas. There's just a few more things I need. The doesn't hold my glasses. Fashionable PPE. I won't even hang my stocking. I poured it up my fireplace. Send me on a super spreader. Get the f out of my face. I just wanna bend the curve for the people that I learned. Together we'll pull through. I will social distance from you. You, baby. I don't want a lot for Christmas. I just need a few more showers. I just wanna keep on streaming while I bake my sourdough. I have made a list and sent it to Netflix, Prime, and HBO. Giving her to Broadway concert. I'll sing along to every note. 'Cause I won't wear no pants tonight. Painted TV's glowing lights. What else is there to do? I will social distance from you. You, baby.
On 2020, it's been a steaming dove. Proud of toilet paper, can even wipe our
Everyone is wondering if the vaccine really coming. We're gonna get what my neighbors gonna get away from me. Oh, I don't want a lot for Christmas while we're stuck in quarantine. I just wanna see my fire, safely singing harmony. Even though we're still apart, I hold you fiercely in my heart. Together we'll move through. I will social distance. I will social distance from you, baby. 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 You.
Beloveds, may we form our point of connection to receive the blessing. Even though we're still apart, I hold you fiercely in my heart. May we each know that we are held in this community fiercely, strongly. No one is alone. And may we find moments of love and joy and hope and companionship and blessing, perhaps even than we did not expect in these days. Blessed be, amen, and namaste.